Welcome to this channel, Welding Info. This is our first module of our preparation course of CSWIP 3.1 and today we will discuss about typical duties of welding inspector in detail. Relevant standards, rules and specifications that a welding inspector should be familiar with at the start of a new contract are all the documents he will need to refer to during the fabrication sequence in order to make judgment about particular details. Typical documents that we need to be referred to are as following: the application standard or code. For visual acceptance criteria, although most of the requirements for the fabricated items should be specified by national standard or client standard or various QC procedures, some features are not easy to define precisely and the requirement may be given as to good workmanship standard. Second, document quality plan or inspection checklist for the type and extent of inspection. Next one is drawing, and this document is used for assembly fit up, detail and dimension requirements. And the last document is QC procedures. Accompanying QC procedures such as those for document control, material handling, electrode storage and issue welding procedure specifications, etc. Good workmanship is the standard that a competent worker should be able to achieve without difficulty when using the correct tool in a particular working environment. In practice, the application of the fabricated item will be the main factor that influence what is judged to be good workmanship, or the relevant client specification will determine what the acceptable level of workmanship is. Reference samples are sometimes needed to give guidance about the accepted standard for details such as weld surface, finish and toe blend, weld root profile, finish required for the weld that need to be dressed by grinding or finishing. The requirement for the examination record inspection reports varies according to the contract and type of fabrication, and there is frequently no requirement for the formal record. When an inspection record is required, it may be necessary to show that items have been checked at the specified stages and have satisfied the acceptance criteria. The form of this record will vary, possibly a signature against an activity on an inspection checklist or quality plan, or it may be an individual inspection report for each item. Move to the next slide. In this slide, I will tell you about guidance and basic requirements for visual inspection. ISO 17637 specifies the visual testing of fusion welds in metallic material. It may also apply to visual testing of the joint prior to welding. And you should remember the name of this standard with the CSWIP exam point of view. They can ask you like which standard used for visual examination of fusion weld. The answer will be ISO 17637. Before starting work on a particular contract, ISO 637 states that the welding inspector should be familiar with the following 3 points. What are the welding code and standard, when they are used and how they developed. Many aspects of the design and fabrication of the welding component are governed by the document known as code and standards. Other names used for such documents include guides, recommended practice, regulation rules, and client specification. Welding inspector should be familiar with the relevant standard, rules, and specification applicable to the fabrication work to be undertaken. These documents are often specified by the client customer as a contractual agreement in order to control the characteristics of the welded fabrication that may affect its service requirements. They are also used by the contractor manufacturer to assist in the development and implementation of their welding quality system. Many clients of welded components have developed and issued a specification that have been compiled by them to address their specific requirements. Such a specification may be limited in application and related only to that customer situation and requirements and can't be used on other projects without official approval. Now I am telling you extra things just for your information about code and standard. It is not a part of CSWIP exam, so it is just for your information. The following are some of the most popular sources of welding code and standards. First is American Welding Society, and short form is AWS, the largest producer of welding codes and standards in the USA. The AWS publishes many documents addressing the use and quality control of welding. These documents include such as general subject as welding definitions and symbols, classification of filler metals, qualifications and testings, welding processes, welding application and safety. Second is American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and short form is ASME. This society is responsible for the development of boiler and pressure vessel codes, which contains 11 sections and cover the design and construction and inspection of boiler and pressure vessels. ASME also produces the code for pressure pipings, which consists of 7 sections. Each section prescribes the minimum requirement for the design, materials, fabrication, erection, testing, and inspection of a particular type of piping system. Both of these documents are American national standards. And third is American Petroleum Institute, and short form is API. This institute publishes many documents relating to petroleum production, a number of which include welding requirements. The most well known is possibly API Standard 1104, standard for welding pipelines and related facilities. Now we should move to the main topic. When structure and pressurized items are fabricated by welding, it is essential that all the weld joints are sound and have suitable properties for their applications. Control of welding is by WPS that give detailed written instruction about the welding condition that must be used to ensure that the welding joint has the required properties. Although WPS are shop floor documents to instruct welders, welding inspectors need to be familiar with them because they will refer to them when checking that welders are working within the specified requirements, and welding inspector should know that welding is being done according to the qualified WPS for the specified material. For example, you have a qualified WPS for the material A106 grade B or A105 CS flange material or A234 WPB butt weld CS fitting, then this WPS only for this material. And for example, and suddenly you found a welding of 106 grade B pipe with SS flange 316L. You can't welding with previous WPS for CS, then you have to get qualified WPS from QC department for CS to SS material welding. And the third point is a weld inspector should have a good vision in accordance with EN 473 and checked every 12 months. EN 473 is European standards, establishes principle for the qualification and certification of personnel who perform industrial non-destructive testing (NDT). With exam point of view, you should know they can ask you about checking duration of vision. Then answer you will be 12 months according to EN 473. These 2 points you should remember for exam point of view. Proceed to the next slide. Here we will discuss about condition of welding inspection. According to ISO 17637, the minimum illumination shall be 350 lux but recommended a minimum of 500 lux, normal shop or office light. Exam point of view, they can ask you a question about what is minimum lux required for visual examination. Then you should remember 350 lux axis. Access to the surface for direct inspection should enable the eye to be within the 600 mm of the surface being inspected, in a position to give a viewing angle of not less than 30 degree. Note these 2 points also 600 mm distance and 30 degree for exam point of view they can ask you. Proceed to the next slide. When access for direct visual inspection is restricted, a mirrored borescope or a fiber optical viewing system, which is also known as videoscope, they are expensive equipments and may be used usually by agreement between the contracting parties. Borescopes are used for visual inspection work where the area to be inspected is inaccessible by other means or where accessibility may require destructive, time-consuming and expensive dismounting activities. A borescope is an optical device consisting of a rigid or flexible tube with an eyepiece on one end and objective lens on the other, linked together by a relay optical system in between. Optical viewing system or video borescope is an advanced type of borescopes that houses a very small images sensor embedded into the tip of the scope. Other items or equipment that may be facilitate the visual examinations are welding gauges like cam gauge, which is also used during CSWIP exam, and it is fabricated in stainless steels and measures the important dimensions of weld preparation and of completed butt fillet welds. Intended for general fabrication works, it rapidly measures the angle of preparations, axis weld metal, fillet weld leg length, and throat size, and misalignments in both metric and imperial. With this gauge, you can measure internal high-low and root gap of the butt joint. You can use magnifying lens for finding defect of welding processes. If a magnification lens is used, it should be x2 to x5. You should remember x2 to x5. They can ask you for a range of magnification lens in CSWIP exam. Move to the next slide. Here we will discuss shortly about welding inspection equipments. Measuring tape. Measuring tape can be used for incoming material dimensions like width and length of plate, Dia length and width of pipe. It can use for welding repair identification markings. Temperature crayons. It is also known as temple sticks made of a special wax, and crayons provide the information needed for determining the surface temperature for metal working. Mark on the surface of metal or sheet. When the surface reaches the rated temperature on temple stick, the mark would melt and show liquid smear appearance, as like in image you can see. We have already discussed about eye gauge and cam gauge in previous slide. You can use this multimeter to measure the voltage amperage, means either welder is using right welding current or voltage according to WPS or not during welding. You can use torchlight for inspection of different defects of welding in the dark, like root fusion, root penetration, surface porosity, pinholes, undercut, lack of fusion, underfill, etc. Magnification glass. I have already discussed about magnification glass in previous slide. Proceed to the next slide. Here we will discuss about duties of welding inspector before welding. Material. It is the duty of welding inspector to check the material is in according to WPS. For example, pipe material is 106 grade B, flange material is A105, and other fitting materials is A234 WPB is mentioned on WPS. You can see an example in the highlighted area of the image. The welding inspector should make sure before welding the same material is being used or not. Also verified and identified the material for MTC. Material is free from contamination like grease, oil, paint, because it can lead to pinhole, porosity, hydrogen cracking. Material dimensions should be according to drawings. Although WPS are shop floor documents to instruct welders, welding inspector need to be familiar with them because they will refer to them when checking that welders are working within specified requirements. Welders need to be able to understand the WPS. Approved WPS should be available to welding inspector and welders before welding. Welding equipments. If you are performing welding tasks on welding machines that is out of calibration, they can create an environment where the welder's errors are possible. So before beginning work on a new welding process, you should have your machine calibrated. Welding experts recommend that your welding machines be calibrated annually. It can help you to avoid making costly mistakes that could have been avoided. Weld preparation. Weld preparation dimensions should match the WPS. In this image you can see the weld preparation dimension are mentioned in WPS. First of all, we will discuss about cap height. It is mentioned 1.5 mm with tolerance of plus minus 1 mm. It means cap height should be 0.5 mm to 2.5 mm. Second dimension is bevel angle, and according to this WPS, bevel angle is 30 degree with tolerance of plus minus 5 degree. It means bevel angle should be between 25 to 35 degree. Third dimension is toe blending. In this image, toe blending is mentioned 1.5 mm with tolerance of plus minus 1 mm. It should be between 0.5 mm to 2.5 mm. Root gap. In this image, you can see the root gap dimension is mentioned 3.0 mm with tolerance of plus minus 1 mm. It means root gap should be between 2 mm to 4 mm. Last dimension is root face. In this image you can see root face dimension is 1.5 mm with tolerance of plus minus 1 mm. It means root gap should be between 0.5 mm to 2.5 mm. Welder qualification. It is the duty of welding inspector to check either welder is qualified for the following joint to weld, and welder certificates are valid and up to date. Joint fit-up. Joint design should be according to WPS or drawing, number or size of tack welds according to code or project specification. Welding consumable. Welding consumable to be used are as specified in WPS. If you are using low hydrogen electrode, then low hydrogen electrode should be controlled or stored as specified according to WPS. This image is a crop part of WPS, and you can see two different type of electrodes are being used for this WPS. In root you will use E6010 for root pass, and E7010 will use for the rest of the passes. For example, if you are working according to this WPS, then before starting the welding you should make sure welder use 6010 electrode for root pass. Preheat should be as minimum specified in accordance with WPS. In this image, you can see preheat temperature is 50 centigrade is specified if ambient temperature is less than 10 centigrade. For example, if you work according to this WPS, then you should maintain this temperature according to saturation. Preheat temperature shall be checked by use of temperature indicating crayons, thermocouple pyrometers, or other suitable means to ensure that the temperature specified in the WPS is obtained prior to and to maintain during welding. The preheat zone shall be at or above the specified minimum temperature in all directions from the point of welding for a distance of 75 mm from all directions of the welding point. Move to the next slide. Here we will discuss about the welding inspector duties during welding. Weather conditions. Welding must be protected from weather conditions that would impair the quality of the completed weld. Ensure weather conditions are suitable with code, means condition will not affect welding. When welding is in the open air, and it is important to be protected from all kinds of weather such as rain, breeze, sun, etc. Working conditions are noticeably improved if welding tent or welding umbrella is used. As I told you in previous slide about welder qualification, during welding inspector should also check welder qualification card is valid and up to date. Welding process. Welding process should be in according to WPS. In picture you can see SMEW process is mentioned on WPS. If you are working according to this WPS, then welding process should be SMEW. Preheat temperature or interpass temperature. Minimum preheat temperature and maximum interpass temperature should be according to WPS, which is specified on WPS. You can see this example image. Preheat and interpass temperature is mentioned according to this WPS. If we work, then these ranges of preheat and interpass should maintain during welding. Preheat temperature shall be checked by use of temperature indicating crayons, thermocouple pyrometers, or other suitable means to ensure that the temperature specified in WPS is obtained prior to and maintained during welding. Welding consumable. As I told you in previous slide, for welding consumables, inspection before welding. Same method will apply during welding. Welding consumable to be used are as specified in WPS. If you are using low hydrogen electrode, then those low hydrogen electrodes should be controlled or stored as specified in WPS. This image is a crop part of WPS, and you can see two different type of electrodes are being used for this WPS. In root pass you will use E6010 and E7010 will use for the rest of the passes. For example, if you are working according to this WPS, make sure welder use 6010 electrode for root pass and E7010 are being used for hot filling and capping. Welding parameters. Welding parameter means current, voltage, and travel speed should be according to WPS. In this image you can see current for every pass. According to this WPS, current for root pass should be within 72 to 93 ampere and 126 to 146 ampere for hot pass, 123 to 130 ampere for filling, and 81 to 106 amperes for capping. Column for voltage. Voltage for root pass should maintain within 24 to 31 volts for root, 24 to 27 volt for hot pass, 24 to 29 for filling pass, and 24 to 31 for capping. And this is a column for travel speed for every pass. Internal cleaning should be in accordance with an improved method to good workmanship standard. Welding is balanced and overwelding is avoided. Improper cleaning can lead to solid inclusion. Here we will discuss about duties of welding inspector. After welding, weld identification. Each weld should mark with welder ID. In this picture you can see every pass of weld is marked with welder ID. It is a WPS number. Root part is done by ID 1007 and 1180, and hot pass is done by welder ID 1151 and 1374, and capping is done by 1110 and 1192. And also write of weld completion date and welding inspector sign also. And this weld identification of every weld is a duty of welding inspector. Visual inspection to be carried out to a certain susceptibility of appearance of weld and suitable for NDT testing. Dimension survey. Check dimension are according to WPS or not. Ensure any modification are included on as-built drawing. NDT. Ensure all NDT is performed according to project specification. If 10% is mentioned in project, then perform NDT on one joint out of 10, and if 100% is mentioned, then perform NDT on all joints. Ensure NDT reports are available for records. Repair. A weld defect to be repaired shall be removed to sound weld metal. Repair weld shall be made using a qualified welding procedure. Repair weld shall be made by a qualified welder or welding operator. Preheating and heat treatment shall be as required for the original welding. Post-weld heat treatment. The post-weld heat treatment to be used after production welding shall be specified in the WPS and shall be used in qualifying the welding procedure. Heating and cooling method will be mentioned in WPS. Heating and cooling rate per hour according to thickness will also specify on WPS. Pressure load test. To check pressure gauges are calibrated which are being used for hydro test and pneumatic test. Ensure test is being performed according to procedure and ensure all records are available. First lecture has ended here. I hope you have a greater understanding of the requirements of welding inspectors before, during and after welding. And in the next module we will discuss about term and definitions of related welding.